Welcome to episode 6 of the Workplace Wanderer. This is where we get to explore all different facets of the workplace and workplace wellness and trying to identify and learn from some experts in the field. I'm taking on the role of somebody who doesn't know much about this field and is trying to learn, honestly. And today I have a guest that I'm actually really excited to talk to. This is a topic that I feel like my interest vacillates from completely diving in to meditation to going months without meditating and really feeling the effects of not doing it. And I know mindfulness and being grounded and having presence, especially as a leader, is one of the most important traits that we can have. So I'm really excited to talk to Matt Cardone. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Blake. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So I'm going to say right off the bat, I'm overcoming a cold. So if you hear a little bit of congestion or nasal talking, that's why you are hearing that noise. So it's funny, we were talking before we started streaming here, that I think the only times that we've actually talked are on interviews while we're interviewing.
That's right.
Pretty funny. So the last time it was a radio show, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago at this point.
Yes.
That I was hosting for a little while. That was an interesting project. It was a lot of fun. Definitely interesting behind the scenes. A lot of drama there. So that was interesting. But I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad I moved on from that and on to bigger, better things.
Yeah.
So I know I asked you the last time we spoke, but a lot of the people who are going to hear this or who are listening or watching right now, which, by the way, we do turn this into a podcast as well. So all the audio is going to be stripped and put into a podcast. I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about you and how you've gotten to this place. You mentioned before we started that your expertise is in meditation. And that just fascinates me because I think we all have an image in our mind of whose expertise is going to be in meditation. And, we think of people who are from the Far East or something. And it's great to talk to somebody who we can relate to here in the States.
Yeah. So what I can do, Blake, is just to provide a little context. Do you want me to give a little background on myself?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. So I grew up in New Jersey. That's where I'm from. I got a scholarship. I played lacrosse at the University of Delaware. And in 2003, separated my shoulder, got injured, got surgery, and was put on pain medication. And back then, there was a new medication that had kind of recently come out that was supposed to be non-addictive. And so I ended up being on it for 9 months. And when they were ready to bring me off of it, I couldn't come off. So they cut me from it, but I found other ways to continue on with it and battled that duality. I graduated college and got into scientific research instrumentation sales. So it's like all the stuff you see in the laboratory on CSI, like centrifugation and pipettes and freezers and incubators. I sold all of that to academia, big pharma, biotech. Okay. But I'd come home and live like that lonely life of like despair. Because I didn't have friends, I didn't have a social life. I just worked and, had an addiction that I was battling. And so I did that for 7 years. And ironically, at the end of it, at the pinnacle, I was ranked number 1 in the company. It was 2 weeks before a national sales meeting. It's winter time. It's February. And I hit a telephone pole with the company car doing about 40 or 50 miles an hour. Wow. And cops showed up, ambulance showed up. And they thought that I hit my head in the steering wheel. That's why I was kind of out of it. But I was, overusing the medication that I was on. And so got on the phone with my director. He said, Matt, you got to pull it together. We got a national sales meeting. You're accepting an award. I've noticed some changes in you. You got 2 weeks. So I got a rental car and a day later got a DUI with the rental car.
Oh, no.
So that next morning on the phone with HR and my director, and they had to let me go. And I got on a plane down to Florida, went through detox, went through the treatment program. And I tried a halfway house that was one of those big ones. Do you remember Good Decisions back in the day?
Yes.
I entered into Good Decisions with I thought it was a great decision with the best intent of really getting well. And like 2 months into my stay there, me and two other guys got an apartment off Okeechobee. And that first night we were downtown and they ordered drinks. And I'm like, oh no, bad decision.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
3 months later, ended up back in treatment, went through that process again. The second time I went through ODAT, which is an all men's cash pay type of, get a sponsor, 90 and 90, curfews, all of that stuff. And that changed my life. It set like the foundation for my recovery moving forward. And got a minimum wage paying job. I was at a call center for Verizon and making $9-10 an hour, whatever it was. Coming from that life of six figures in my 20s to now I just turned 30 and I'm making $10 an hour. So it was humbling. It was like eye-opening for me. And
so I'm thinking too, you came from this as being this high performer, functioning person with a substance use disorder that's became accustomed to living a certain lifestyle based on your income. And then you have to really humble yourself and go through this process a couple times, it sounds like, and then really start from the ground up again.
Yeah. So there was like the ego component part of me had some challenges with that, especially going through the steps and the better than and even the less than popping up.
Comparing yourself to other people that you were living with, I imagine.
Yep. And in the rooms too, that was a tough one that I had to work through. And then, it was also ironically a big weight off my shoulders too, because it was just carrying that for so long, for 7 years.
Yeah.
And not having to hide, not having to lie all the time. And about a year into recovery, I started, sponsoring guys and speaking on a lot of meetings. And there was an owner of a treatment center after a meeting that I spoke at said, have you ever thought of working in the industry and, helping other people out? And I said, no, I'd never thought of that. And so he brought me in. I did business development for kind of like a startup treatment center in Delray. And then a few months later, I was at Transformations for a short time, local treatment center. Yep. I was there for a month, and then I got picked up by a big institute that had 7 facilities nationwide, none of which were in Florida. So I was flying kind of all different states, doing business development. And at that time, I also got certified as an interventionist and a recovery coach, and had a pretty good program running. I was just really challenged with like a lot of anxiety still at the time. And, my sponsor would say, hit your knees and pray or go pick someone up. But sometimes it was like 11 at night, I'm laying in bed and I can't get my mind to stop working. Just want it to stop so I could sleep. And I was dating a girl at the time, and she was into meditation. I never thought, I was an athlete growing up. I thought meditation was for like hippies and burnouts, like chakras and rainbows. I thought I could never get into that. Right. And she brought me to a center, and I kind of had an experience where it was like, there wasn't any thought. I wasn't sleeping, and I was almost like in this middle state, like a gap state. I thought that was really interesting. I've never felt that before.
And I hope you don't mind me jumping in kind of some questions, but was it one of those first times was you just had a few seconds of clarity, just a few seconds of peace, and that was all it really took to get you hooked on it, right?
Yeah. It wasn't like 10 minutes of like abundant euphoria. It was like a glimpse of it. And I thought like, wow, I don't know how to replicate that, but that was really cool.
What was that peace that I just felt for 3 seconds, for 5 seconds?
Yes, exactly. So I knew there was something to it, and there wasn't a ton of apps out at the time. This is like 2013, 2014 almost. And so, I was talking about meditation to other people. I was sporadically kind of trying to get into it, didn't know how to do it. And I was out in Santa Monica, California. We had an eating disorder program out there. And one of my work colleagues called me. We talked all the time on the phone, and she said, "You're into that like hippy dippy meditation stuff?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She said, "There's this guy that came into town. He's like world renowned meditation teacher, spent 3 decades in India. He's doing a talk right down the street from where you're staying." And I thought, all right, I'll go check it out. So I went in there, and I'm from the Northeast, from Jersey. My dad's from Queens. I'm highly skeptical of people in general and any type of anything that doesn't have like data on paper or
Yeah.
scientifically proven in the science community. And so this guy came in, he had a big long white beard and sat down and he just started talking. He was just like very comfortable, very fluent. And there was at one point where he's talking and he told a joke and nobody laughed. It was just like dead silent. And
Yeah.
he chuckled like his laugh out because he thought it was funny, finished laughing, and then just continued on with no regard to the reaction of the other people. And I thought
Mm.
that right there, whatever that is, because I just always cared so much about what other people thought, whatever that is, like, I just want some of that. And
Right.
so I studied under him, spent 4 days in Santa Monica studying under him, and then came back to Florida. And the biggest difference was like I was
How,
meditating every day.
how did you leap from going to see this guy speak to being able to study under him? Did you go to him after he spoke, or how did that happen?
Yeah, great question. So he does those talks and then offers his
Oh,
course at 7 a.m. in the morning the following 4 days. So it was
okay.
like 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning, and he teaches a technique of meditation.
Hmm. I love that it wasn't necessarily what he said that got you, but it was his reaction to a joke that nobody laughed at. You're able to see the level of peace that he had and comfortability with himself. That's what sold you. It wasn't even the content of what he was sharing.
No, yeah, exactly. It was like his delivery and he was what I wanted. I wanted some of that. And
Yeah.
so continued meditating and went through a really tough time where this is when kind of fentanyl hit South Florida. It's like
Mm,
after the Flocka epidemic, then fentanyl came in.
sure.
And it happened to be that my best friend and roommate and girlfriend both relapsed in the same month
Oh,
and they overdosed and passed.
oh
And
no.
so I was at that point in my recovery where I was like, the average logical person would be like, that is enough to have you never think about it again. But my first thought was like, I want to drown all this pain out. I want to just kind of forget about everything. So I had an opportunity where I could turn left or turn right, and I thought, meditation has helped my spirituality. It's helped my sense of peace. I'd like to learn more about it. And I need a little bit of like a break from the everyday grind here. So I took PTO, I booked a flight to India, packed a bag, and just flew out there
Hmm.
looking for something. Don't know what. And I landed and I'm waiting at the baggage claim and the belt's going around and people are taking their bags. And then it came down to me and this Indian woman standing next to me. And then her bag comes out on the belt and the belt stopped. Luggage nowhere to be found. I had a backpack with like headphones, an extra pair of boxers, and a toothbrush, and a book, something like that.
Oh my
And
God.
I thought, all right, here I am. This is like the start of it. And I ended up spending 3 years traveling through India.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, with no plan, no regard for where you were going when you landed.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get too sidetracked from the topic here, but I have to ask you, like, what was your first stop? Where did you go?
Yeah. So I flew in first, it was South India. So it was a city called Chennai. And I did kind of like a southeast loop around India, Chennai, Pondicherry, Oroville, Vellore, just speaking with people, learning about the culture and where the next stops should
Mm,
be on my trek. And then I took a 6 hour train ride north from Delhi to Haridwar. So you get to see the full sweeping landscape of the country, which changes drastically. It's a beautiful landscape in India. And where I ended up was in Rishikesh, where the actual tradition of the meditation that I learned is still intact and it's thousands of years old. And
wow.
so I kind of landed at that ashram and dove deeper into, what I came from.
There's a certain level, and we talk about this a lot with leaders, of having the ability to go into a situation sometimes with no plan and allow the external factors to influence whatever strategy you're going to come up with next. And that also means that you have to be okay with failure at times or making mistakes and things going wrong for you and being able to adapt and overcome those issues. I imagine traveling through a country that is so vastly different than our own, there was probably a lot of mistakes, a lot of times maybe even taken advantage of, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So in the big cities where there's a high population of people, there is more of that happening. And that's, I've been to a lot of different countries in Europe, South America. In the big cities,
Yeah.
you have more of a propensity to be taken advantage of. In the rural areas of India, people are really different. They
Hmm.
have like a really strong influence of their religion and putting God first. And so there really wasn't many threats that I felt were kind of upon me. I mean, on it, like you could get a room there for $11 US a night. And I bought clothes because I didn't have, my luggage. And I bought all native Indian garb wear for like $7 for a shirt, $8 for pants,
Wow.
linen, So it was easy to get by financially. And, I've met some of the right people that kind of put me in the right direction. And then at the end of that, my span there was a training process to be able to become a teacher from this tradition. And it's like a 3-month gauntlet that they put you through. It's from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. And you're either translating Sanskrit, like it's an ancient language, um, studying the Veda, which is the philosophy which it comes from, or meditating. So there's a time where we meditated 14 hours a day for 3 weeks in a row.
Don't your legs fall asleep? Like, that's what I.
It's it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, everything kind of falls asleep. It's people ask me like, what is that experience like meditating for that amount of time? And I say it's like everything falls apart to pieces, and then you pick them back up again and do it again the next day.
Wow.
So
I mean, I know this is on LinkedIn, and I probably shouldn't say this. It's not exactly professional, but I have such a bony ass. I can just imagine my ass just hurting so bad. Sitting
yeah,
that long.
well, that's like one of the biggest myths of meditation is to sit upright on a hardwood floor
Hmm.
with like fancy finger positions and your back fully erect. The way that I teach meditation is the way that I learned it is you want to have your back supported, your head and neck free, but you can sit on a couch, sit on your bed. Like I had a cot that I could sit on up against, the wall. So I had some cushion and it's not the idea of just sitting still, even if it hurts. If your knee starts to hurt, you lengthen your leg out.
Yeah.
And if you have an itch, you scratch it. It
Yeah.
doesn't impede on the actual meditation itself.
So that actually answers one of my questions, is that you can move during it. You don't have to be perfectly still for 14 hours or for any length of time. You can address concerns. I know, like for example, I try to meditate at least 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day. And I know sometimes I'll have like an itch. If you have a beard, it can get itchy sometimes. And I try to actually focus on the itch is what I end up doing, and just kind of going like getting granular with the itch and just going deep into it and exploring it. But eventually it becomes so distracting that I have to move, and I feel like I'm almost disappointed that I ruined my meditation. So
Yeah,
you don't have to just address it and keep going.
right. And that goes along with, so there was a Harvard psychologist, his name's Dr. Daniel Wegner. And interesting story, he came across a travel journal from a Russian philosopher of the 18th century. And this guy had hundreds of pages theorizing whether or not a human could actually block the mind from thinking a thought or clear the mind of thought, right? And so Dr. Wegner was fascinated by this, studied it, decided to run his own study. And so he had a control group, 20 people, and he had them in a room. Each person had a desk, and on the desk was a little bell. And so the study was two parts. The first part was he had people come in, sit down, and the instruction was, I want you to focus only on white polar bears for the next 5 minutes. If another thought comes in, that's fine, but I want you to come back to focusing again on white polar bears. Everyone understand? Yes. Have them close their eyes. He hit the timer. After 5 minutes transpired, open the eyes, get up, walk around for a minute or two, come back, sit down. Part two of the study was, now I want you to put your hand on your bell. And then when I ask you to close your eyes, I want you to think of anything in the world other than white polar bears. If you happen to recognize that you're thinking about it, I want you to ring your bell.
Hmm.
So he had them close their eyes. He hit the timer. After 7 seconds in the study, a bell went off. And then after about a minute, the sounds of bells were deafening.
Right.
And so I'm paraphrasing here and I'm shortening it up. But what he wrote in Psychology Today, because this was a pretty wide known phenomenon, is what the mind resists persists. Mm-hmm. So if you resist a thought, feeling, emotion, or itch, it's going to persist exponentially. You ever been through a bad breakup, Blake?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like in high school, you get dumped and you're like, I'm never thinking about her ever again. Who do you end up thinking about for the next 6 weeks?
I mean, there's the phrase, everybody wants what they can't have. And I guess that's what this is it's all you can think about is what you can't have. Mm-hmm. What you're not supposed to think about is all you can think about. So it makes a lot of sense.
Sure. And it's the same thing with the itch, right? If you have an itch and you scratch it, it clears that cache out. So you're not in rumination of thought.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I do want to say there's some people here who are watching the live. Amanda Marino, who you know as
love Amanda,
who is awesome. So she's here. James Whittick said, Matthew, this is fantastic. Your vulnerability is powerful. Sarah Frias is here, who is our family and team manager, and I don't think we could survive without her. So I appreciate them watching. Feel free, anybody, to comment, throw some questions in the comment section, and we'll make sure we get them answered. So I usually like to start this, and I appreciate that background and giving us a deep dive into who you are and how you got here. And I do want to explore a little bit further. One thing I like to start off with is actually something that we started was the Next Level Cards of Progress.
Cool.
Where I'm going to draw a random card, and it's 32 cards with a number of questions that I came up with. And the whole point of these questions is really to influence vulnerability, to allow us to get on a deeper plane of thinking so that when we have conversations, we're a little bit more open and vulnerable and we can think a little bit more critically. So I'm shuffling. I've been kind of shuffling as you've been speaking. I'm a card player, so shuffling comes second nature to me, so it's no worries. I'm going to draw 3 cards. I'm going to ask you left, right, or middle.
Right.
Okay. It's funny because I think you already answered this question. What's happened to you that's changed your outlook on life? What were the positive effects and what were the negative effects?
Wow. Interesting. What's happened to me that has affected significant? So I would say the entire process, because I'll tell you this, when I was in sales, living in Hoboken and doing that whole, my biggest worry was I would continue doing what I'm doing, retire at 65, and then try and live life from there. And that was like my bleak outlook. And I would say entering into recovery, actually being open to diving into a spiritual path and the idea of a higher power, and then shifting, everything from onto me and what can I get to having my work be about serving other people and helping other people the best that I can.
It's a great answer. And I think as somebody else who's also in recovery, I relate. And I think a lot of us, our recovery has drastically influenced our outlook on life. I'm going to say for me what just came to mind first, and it's probably because yesterday I did a 4-hour seminar on the theory of compassionate leadership, which is a branch of servant leadership, but it's as leaders, we view all situations through compassion and empathy. And there's a whole ton of benefits to a company that takes on this style of leadership. But why I think I'm so fascinated by it is that it's essentially validating to who I believe that I am at my core and who I fought trying to be, which is ultimately what led me to my addiction issues myself. Mm-hmm. Was in high school up until probably about 17, I was Mr. Nice Guy, and I was this person who just bent over backwards for everybody and almost took it too far. I was the people pleaser, but took it too far to the point where I was hurting myself. And I'll never forget, it was homecoming my senior year, and it was just one of those series of unfortunate events that just all day long people took advantage of me, and it just built up to this frustration. And It ended the day of people spray painting my car that night, thinking that I wouldn't care because like I never get mad. So
Right.
thinking I wouldn't care. And I remember blowing up and yelling that I'm never going to be the nice person again. And from that point on, I kind of took on this persona of a real jerk, honestly, just somebody who bullied, who made fun of people, who was never nice. I went from being a yes man to an always no man. And interestingly enough, that's when my substance use kicked off
Mm,
because I stopped living in my truth and I
right.
stopped being the person I'm supposed to be, and living that fake persona really hurt me. And as I found recovery and developed an understanding of what it means to serve others while also being selfless, while also being having to be selfish at time to take care of myself and understanding self-care, I started to grasp this concept that I can be the nice person, I can be empathetic, I can still do good for others while still taking care of myself.
Mm,
It wasn't until I would say in the last couple of years where I really took a deep dive into this theory for school of servant leadership and compassionate leadership, where I felt validation that I can actually be a leader in what I'm doing by utilizing my strength and utilizing the person that I am to help others and guide others through change processes or whatever it may be, um, while also learning strategic methods of how to balance that out, and that also holding other people accountable
right.
and having clear expectations of others and letting people know, what my expectations are and what doesn't work for me, boundaries. Learning all of that as a leader, um, really changed my outlook and perspective on who I am and who I can become moving forward in my life.
Wow. Powerful.
Sort of a long answer, but I don't know. It's something that really was very validating to me, and it's just made me fall in love, and it's what's keeping me going back to school for this type of stuff. I love it.
It sounds like you've done a lot of inner work. What's been some of the steps that got you to be able to be aware of that of yourself?
I, you know, I think it's a combination of so much. The 12-step program, first of all, I think being open to feedback at all times and really being open uh, to feedback that's sometimes not even being given to me. I feel the more open-minded I've become throughout my recovery process, the more situations I find myself in where I'm able to learn.
Yeah.
And I think obviously therapy and
Sure.
just continuing my education, always remaining teachable, I think has been very important to me.
Yeah.
And then, the periods, honestly, of meditation or spirituality has allowed me to connect with that deeper self and get to know myself better. I am in no way close to where I would like to be in that. I still have some deep insecurities and some other issues that I'm trying to work on.
Sure.
But I've come to appreciate the journey
Yeah.
throughout this and become open to a lot.
That's what it's about, the process.
Yeah. So I want to move into the topic. We managed now to speak for 30 minutes without talking really about meditation and workplaces, because this is just such an interesting topic, and I hope it's helpful to a lot of people. Where where's the intersect for meditation and workplaces? I think a lot of people in work almost feel like the idea of meditation, or what they believe meditation is, doesn't have a home at work,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So where does that intersect, and how is it beneficial to people's work?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of like both ends of the pendulum on this. So on the far end of the pendulum, I was hired as a field training officer, an FTO for the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office. They brought me in to teach their new hires. They had about 60 a quarter, meditation, mindfulness, emotional regulation, and emotional survival. And so essentially doing ride-alongs and studying their field of work, they're trained to be in a hypervigilant state for 12-hour shifts,
Yeah.
right? So adrenaline, cortisol, blood pressure, all of that through the roof, because they need all of their senses heightened when they're approaching a vehicle and they don't know what or who is in it, right? And then years and years of doing that, they come home to their family. The last thing they want to do is schedule plans, think about a date night, roll around on the carpet with their kids, interact with their family, right? And so they called it the magic couch in the industry of law enforcement, where they sit on the couch and they don't watch anything in particular. They want to just go from channel to channel and kind of zone out.
Yeah.
And it's because their adrenal glands are blown all the time,
sure.
right? And so one of the things I started to incorporate was first thing in the morning to get a meditation in, and then post shift. So it's strongly recommended to get out of the uniform when the shift is over, then get in the car and drive home. And if they could get their meditation in like at the headquarters, that's good. But they can also do it when they pull into the driveway, 10 or 15 minutes of meditation before walking into the house. And the idea of it is, you think about a jumbo jet, soaring through the sky, and when it's approaching the tarmac, not having wheels, that's what it's like walking into the house, right? That kind of like turbulent landing. And meditation just kind of puts those wheels out for that landing to occur, to soften. So they're in the sympathetic fight or flight for 12 hours. And then they're going to have everything with physiology has an opposite and equal reaction, right? So if you're not balancing it in the parasympathetic, or rest, digest, reproductive, that's when you start to accumulate more and more stress in the nervous system. So when you can balance it out, now your emotions and the chemistry of the brain is going to be regulated. So when you walk in the house, you could be dad, not burnt out from the trauma that, or mom, not burnt out from the trauma that you've experienced in that 12-hour shift.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So, and you touched on a couple points, but I think people underestimate meditation, and I think they also have very unrealistic expectations of what meditation looks like or what it can be. And it's funny. It's almost like you have to wear kid gloves and almost change the term to mindfulness. Take a mindfulness moment instead of meditation.
Yeah.
Somehow meditation has this negative connotation to where when you hear the word, you almost think of the person that you described that you saw when you were in California, this guy with the big beard.
With a long beard, sitting on a rock near a ravine, peaceful, right? Full lotus position. And they're probably in a state of euphoria the entire time. That's right. The expectations that are built with meditation, right? And with anything, expectations always lead to suffering, regardless of what it is. So you're right. I use mindfulness quite a bit, and even label it mindfulness when it is meditation, just to open the door for people. But meditation in and of itself is something where people often think that they could just figure it out on their own. And it's actually similar to swimming, right? So if you didn't know how to swim as an adult here in South Florida, would you recommend renting a boat, driving it out into the ocean, jumping in and trying to figure out how to swim?
Probably not.
Or what most people are doing, you watch a few YouTube videos, you listen along to a couple of guided apps on Headspace, and then you get in the boat and try and figure it out when you're in the water. Mm-hmm. Oh shoot, what the guy say, right? About swimming. Do I blow bubbles, or it's like, and then they think I just can't swim. Like, swimming is not for me. So the first step I always recommend to people is like, find an instructor that you resonate with to teach you meditation, because they'll get you in the shallow end. They'll show you what it feels like for the body to float, to blow bubbles, to get comfortable with front stroke, then backstroke, then you're doing flip turns. And the whole idea is to be able to do it self-sufficiently on your own, to learn a technique that you could do with consistency and regularity to maximize results.
Well, and that's the other piece of it too, is I think that there are different techniques to this, and we have to be able to be willing to explore what's going to work for us. And I think, honestly, if I can just speak about myself, is that's what turned me off to meditation for so many years, where I would give it these tries because I was trying these very structured approaches to it that were techniques that didn't work for me, or I was trying to do it at very specific times that I was told to do it at, and I didn't want to do it at those times.
Right.
And for me, where I finally started to feel a connection to this idea of meditation or mindfulness was when I was doing it on my terms and doing it in ways that worked for me, that I had to explore a whole bunch of options until I finally found something that said, wow, I'm getting those few seconds of peace that we talked about early on in a 10-minute meditation. Maybe I'm 30, 40 seconds of total peace, but I'm finding that that's all I needed. And I had to let go of the expectations that I was going to be floating above my bed for 10 minutes and it was going to be easy in and out, and realize that those 30, 40 seconds is the goal, and that will expand out over time.
Yes. Yeah. And just to kind of give some like intellectual layering on meditation, so everyone's up to speed, it essentially gets broken down into three main categories in the West. So, like the first category we call contemplative meditation. So, those are apps like Headspace, like I mentioned, Calm, Insight Timer. It could be YouTube videos where they're guiding you through. If anyone's ever taken yoga, right at the end of the class, they lie you down on your back in Shavasana. And so all of these, like the general experience of contemplative meditation is someone guiding you through like a visualization that you could visualize yourself in an open field. You could feel the sun on your face. You could smell the flowers. You could hear the birds. So what you're doing, Blake, is essentially delineating information via the five senses and inserting thoughts into the mind that are more charming than whatever's regularly going on. The human mind has 50 to 70,000 thoughts every day. Studies show that 90% of those are ones that we ruminate on over and over again. So when you have an experience where you're in that field and you're not thinking about, the tough stuff your kid is going through or what you need to do for work or what responsibilities you have coming up next week, you're able to sink into present moment awareness. Now, the biggest challenge that I find with contemplative meditation is anytime you want to do it, you got to go to Sarah's yoga class. You got to pull up the app. You got to log into YouTube, find a video. So it adds, if you're not doing that, you're not meditating, right? And then the second category of meditation is kind of what you described that was suggested to you early in your experience. And that's called concentrative meditation. These are techniques that were originally designed for monks, people that meditate 10 to 15 hours a day for life. Right? They live at monasteries, they meditate in caves, usually in the East, right? And what we've done, and it usually incorporates a lot of focus, effort, and trying, a lot of concentration. And we've watered them down to make them more relatable and digestible for Westerners. Just do that technique for 10 or 15 minutes. Focus on your breath, focus on a certain thought, stare at the flame. And when you're only doing something, and it does work, I will say all meditations work for how they're designed. But if you're only doing something for 10 to 15 minutes, when at maximum benefit, it's designed to be done for 10 to 15 hours, what's your ROI?
You get like 1%.
Yeah, it's actually slightly just less. That's good math. Slightly less than 1%, right? So that's one of the challenges people run into. And that's one of the most like widely talked about type of meditations in the West, is that concentrative, coming from almost like the Buddhist traditions. And then the third is a self-induced transcendence-based technique. So that is one in which usually using sound technology, like repeating a sound or a mantra just intrinsically to yourself, helps de-excite the mind to its least excited state, right? Allows you to go into where there's no longer thinking, there's no longer the mantra or the sound. And the beauty about that is then the body can fully de-excite. And that's where the magic happens. There's a psychosomatic effect, right? You've been around a lot of people. You've worked with a lot of people that are going through tough stuff. When they're anxious, what are they doing? Cracking knuckles, biting fingernails, twirling hair, can't sit still. Busy mind, busy body. Anxious mind, anxious body. In meditation, same principle, but it's the opposite. Quiet the mind, de-excite it. Now the body can de-excite and get maximum rest, because rest is really the antidote to stress.
Yeah. Wow. It's very interesting. I love this. I love hearing, like, it's funny, earlier you mentioned you had this mind coming from the Northeast that you needed something that was you're very skeptical. So you need something that had data and science behind it. And the truth is pretty much what you've explained this whole time is the data and science behind all of this.
Sure.
The background information that we all need to know of why this actually works.
Yeah.
I think, and if I can make a recommendation, and I'm not anybody who's anywhere near Matt, and I'm no expert on meditation, I think one thing that I can talk about in my own experience that also turned me off or turned me away from meditation was uh, giving up at times when I found one that didn't work for me. And I think, like anything in life, meditation requires exploration, and we need to not give up, but just continue to try different methodology until we find one that works for ourselves. I even know, talking about the sound-based ones, or there was one that was like, I was listening to binaural beats, and I was in Vegas at a conference, and probably a conference you've been to as well in the summer there. And I'm up in my room and I needed to meditate, and I'm doing this binaural beat meditation, and I go into a complete state of vertigo from the beats. And for me, it was one of those things where I was like, I swore off meditation at that point for another good couple years, until I said, you know what, I'm judging it based on one modality. Let me try something else, and kind of kept exploring till I found something that works for me. What I found, and I think this is probably the easiest for people in workspaces to grasp, and probably the easiest for people to do, is that connection with the breath, and understanding how powerful just being mindful of our breath is, and using our breath to help induce a calming state. You talked about meditation for first responders and for policemen, but that level of stress and the cortisol that people experience it's present in every line of work. We all experience it. I mean, in the behavioral health field, of course, in tech, I don't care where you are, you're experiencing these high levels of stress, and we all need some type of outlet or some way to manage those cortisol levels, and almost reset the body and be able to go home and detach, so we're not, ruining our personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain tips or tricks or recommendations that you may have that could be applicable to anybody within workspaces, any type of employees, that
Yeah,
you think would be really helpful?
I have a technique of mindfulness that's called coming to the senses.
Hmm.
I could run you through it. It's about 2 minutes long. You
Sure,
interested?
let's do it.
All right. So close your eyes and just allow your body to settle in. And first, just begin to bring awareness to the breath without focus or concentration. Just noticing breath flowing in, flowing back out. And it's good to start then after with 3 deep breaths. So first one, in through the nose, draw it deep into the belly, expand it out into the chest, fill it all the way up to the top, brief hold, then nice, smooth, easy exhale out through the mouth. Let the breath settle at the bottom. And then again, in through the nose, deep down into the belly, out into the chest, all the way up to the top, and hold. Nice, smooth, easy exhale out through the mouth. Good. Now, last one. In through the nose, way deep down into the belly, all the way out into the chest, and up to the top, and hold. Then really exaggerate the length of this exhale out through the mouth and expel all the CO2 out from the body, every last drop of it. Then we begin by first bringing awareness to any sound that you could hear in the space around you. So without trying to grasp anything, not trying to push anything away, invite a neutral orientation that allows the external environment to be exactly as it is. Easily shift awareness to the nose, sense of smell. You could even notice the tactile sensations of the breath kind of moving along the inner lines of the nostrils, filling the body with a warm, healing light, and emptying back out with just as much ease. So nothing to hold on to, nothing to let go of. Gently bring the attention into the mouth and tongue, sense of taste. Remove the tongue from the roof of the mouth, allow it to rest on the lower palate, relax bottom jaw, and begin to bring awareness into the body. First, by noticing temperature of the air in the room, the way the clothes feel against the skin, even the weight of the bones, held up and supported by the seat that you're in. As you begin to feel yourself ground and descend deep down into the earth, you're allowing the body to become heavy, but also giving permission for the mind to stay light. And take a nice deep breath in through the nose, fill it all the way up to the top and hold it. Nice, smooth, easy exhale out through the mouth. All the way out. And then when you're ready, and on your own time, slowly open the eyes. So that's coming to the senses, right? And essentially what we're doing there is first incorporating breath to alter the physiology of the body. We're going to drop the metabolic rate using breath. That breath, there's two components to it. An advanced version of it is called 2x breath, where you breathe in through the nose to about 90%, then take it another 10% in. So then hold, and then smooth, soft, easy exhale out through the mouth. And it's proven that after 6 of those breaths, the metabolic rate drops precipitously. So now you're creating and cultivating the environment to be able to attain present moment awareness. And I like to start with the senses. So we go from the 5 senses that we have, subtle to gross. So the most subtle of our senses is sense of sound. So we go from sound to smell to taste to touch. And that's the body. And then once you've established yourself in present moment, you take that deep breath, you open your eyes, and your entire, physiology of the body has shifted.
Wow. The best part of this is exactly what you said. It's how practical it is for people to be able to do. It just took 2 or 3 minutes and really just focusing on being present in the current moment. So
Sure.
I appreciate this so much, and I appreciate you coming on here and telling us your story and how you've gotten here. And I hope people have learned from you and have learned from this this live or podcast, however you're listening to this. The meditation, you can let go of what your preconceived notions of what meditation is, and be willing to explore the idea of it and understand the benefits it's going to have for you. And the best thing you can do is give it a shot and just give yourself the gift of meditation or of some type of mindfulness practice so that you can be better at what you do. One of the pieces that I talk about when I do discuss compassionate leadership, and I talk about servant leadership and the importance of it, is that it's all rooted in mindfulness, in presence and presence. You cannot be a compassionate or empathetic leader if you're not in the present moment. If you're getting caught up in your emotions, it's impossible to see all things and all scenarios through an empathetic lens. I always say that the antidote or the kryptonite to kindness is burnout or heightened emotion, or my heightened emotional state. And so it's important for us to be able to have these tools to bring us back, to ground us. If you're about to have a difficult conversation with somebody at work, or you're about to go into a meeting where you have to present, or if you want to perform at your best, the best thing you can do is take 2 minutes to just ground yourself in the present moment. And even if it's not, you don't have 2 minutes, you just said six of those breaths. You just need to take 6 deep breaths and use that practice, and you can be back in the moment to calm yourself enough to be able to be present as a leader.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And to bring it home now full circle, I gave you that example of like the extreme polarity of law enforcement, but everyday people like us. Like what I like to do is I put it in my calendar every day to remind myself to take a moment, right? And a lot of times, like the biggest concerns that we have is like it's a waste of time. I don't have time to do it. But the beauty is you do that around 2 or 3 p.m., you're going to get time back tenfold because you'll be more efficient, you'll be more present, you'll be more able to focus on tasks that you're doing at the time.
Yeah, a big fallacy is that you don't need another cup of coffee at 2 or 3 p.m. You might just need to ground yourself and just bring yourself back to the moment and use some breathing techniques instead of some coffee, and maybe drink some water.
Yeah.
I can tell you from my own perspective and from what I've heard from so many people is that meditation is not for me because my mind runs at a mile a minute, or because I can't shut it off, or it's too hard, or I don't have the time. And we have to recognize when we're making excuses to our own detriment, and that when we need to try something that's hard, we need to be able to give our all in it and be consistent about it to be able to start to feel those effects. Everything that those excuses are all reasons to meditate, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you, Matt. I really appreciate this. And I appreciate learning more about you and your story and some of the bravery that you've had. It's your story is very unique, and your exploration of meditation and the practice itself is unique. And I don't think that that's what has to be everybody's experience, but I'm so glad that you did, and you're able to teach people on all levels about this practice.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Blake. Anytime.
All right. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and end this. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We really appreciate your time. This will be live on my LinkedIn for quite a while. You'll be able to be living there. It'll also be a podcast in a couple of weeks called The Workplace Wanderer. It's available wherever podcasts are available. Thanks, everyone.